The Caribbean is at a crossroads. Oil-rich nations like Guyana, Trinidad and Jamaica are facing a unique moment in history. Guyana's oil boom is reshaping the region, but it's sparking intense debate. While corporate giants like ExxonMobil are seeing record profits, everyday citizens in these countries are feeling the squeeze as the cost of living skyrockets. You may have heard by now, but in the next 2 to 3 months, Jamaica will find out if drilling for oil makes commercial sense. Meanwhile, Trinidad is actively looking for investors for its oil refinery and other related oil deals. Guyana might have rushed in after Trinidad, but they didn't learn from the mistakes of their neighbor. Now Jamaica, if it discovers oil, will have a chance to learn from both Trinidad's and Guyana's lessons. What's next for these nations? Stick with us because the future of Caribbean oil could look very different depending on how they handle the wealth. When you think of an oil boom, you probably imagine wealth pouring into the nation, improving life for everyone. But in Guyana, the situation is more complicated than that. Since discovering oil in the Stabroek Block back in 2019, Guyana's economy has grown exponentially. From a $5 billion GDP to a projected $25 billion in just a few short years, the numbers are staggering. But while the government points to infrastructure projects and new jobs, everyday people are seeing very little of the benefits. Instead, the rise in oil revenues has coincided with an even steeper rise in living costs. For most people, that's what they feel every day. The rising prices of food, transportation, utilities, and unfortunately, these cost increases aren't matched by corresponding wage growth. For many families, this means a squeeze on their budget. Even the pension increases have been criticized as insufficient to keep pace with the rising cost of basic goods. So where's all the money going? That's where the debate heats up. The oil industry has raked in huge profits, but most of those profits are being reaped by the companies themselves, like ExxonMobil, or are being reinvested in large-scale infrastructure projects. The reality on the ground is that these projects don't do much to directly address the needs of everyday people. What's missing is a fair distribution of wealth, something that would put more money in people's pockets, especially those in the most vulnerable communities. At the same time, the government argues that the oil boom is creating new job opportunities. Over 100,000 new jobs have been created in the past 5 years. However, many of these are low-skill, low-wage jobs that don't bring about the kind of social mobility that's needed. And even within the oil and gas sector, critics argue that the jobs being created don't benefit Guyanese workers as much as they should. For example, while the sector has created technical jobs in engineering and other highly skilled roles, these positions are still limited compared to the overall demand for well-paying, high-skilled jobs. Opposition voices like MP Tabitha Saraboe-Halley have pointed out that this type of growth is deeply problematic. Sure, the GDP is growing, but the people of Guyana aren't feeling that growth in their day-to-day lives. The wealth from oil is being siphoned off by multinational corporations and a small group of elites, leaving the majority of citizens in the same tough position they were before the boom. The increase in cost of living has outpaced any tangible benefits that ordinary Guyanese citizens are seeing. Now, if we zoom out and look at what's happening in the region, you can start to understand why this is drawing so much attention from neighboring countries like Trinidad and Jamaica. Both of these nations have long had stakes in the oil and gas sector. But as they watch Guyana's experience, they're starting to see some of the risks involved in an unregulated or poorly structured oil boom. Trinidad, for example, is already in the process of negotiating new oil agreements that will likely affect its energy future for decades to come. This is a country that's seen its oil production decline in recent years, and it's now scrambling to find new ways to maximize its resources. Trinidad's situation is interesting because it faces a different challenge: how to revitalize an oil sector that's in decline. But the question they'll have to ask themselves is this: will they learn from Guyana's mistakes, or will they fall into the same trap of letting a small group reap the rewards of an energy boom while leaving the rest of the population to shoulder the burden? The lesson from Guyana is clear. Energy deals must include provisions for local benefits, from jobs to investments in education and healthcare, not just infrastructure projects that may seem impressive but don't deliver immediate relief to those struggling most. As for Jamaica, they're watching Guyana's oil boom unfold with great interest. Though Jamaica doesn't have significant oil reserves, its role as an energy hub in the Caribbean is becoming more important. The island nation controls a significant part of the region's refining capacity, and it has been eyeing new oil prospects which could shift the energy balance in the region. But like Trinidad, Jamaica will have to think long-term about how to use its energy sector to benefit not just the elites, but everyday citizens. For all these countries, the oil boom is a defining moment. How they navigate this period, how they ensure that oil wealth is fairly distributed, that there's transparency in deals, and that the benefits are felt across society will shape the future of the Caribbean. The oil boom is a great opportunity, but it's also a test of how well countries can balance short-term gains with long-term sustainability for their citizens. The big question remains, can Guyana, Trinidad and Jamaica turn their oil booms into a real economic transformation that benefits everyone? Or will they become cautionary tales of what happens when resource wealth is concentrated in the hands of a few? Only time will tell, but the stakes are high. The pressure on these governments to get it right has never been greater. As Guyana's economy continues to boom, so does the intensity of the debate around how the country manages its newfound wealth. The situation in Guyana is a microcosm of a broader issue facing developing nations rich in natural resources. If the wealth generated from oil doesn't reach the people who need it most, resentment builds, and the social fabric of a country starts to tear at the seams. For Trinidad, their future in oil is already being shaped by the lessons learned from past deals. Over the years, the country has navigated both booms and busts in the oil and gas sector. Trinidad's oil production has been in decline, and now with its refining capacity sitting at a crossroads, the government is looking for new investors to breathe life back into its energy industry. The deal-making process is ongoing, and there's pressure to ensure that any new agreements not only revive the sector, but also deliver long-term benefits for the people of Trinidad. Will the country build on its existing infrastructure and create more opportunities for its citizens, or will it fall into the trap of letting foreign investors walk away with the lion's share? Meanwhile, Jamaica faces a different kind of challenge. The island is not an oil producer like its neighbours, but it could be a key player in the region's energy future. With the global push for cleaner energy, Jamaica's refining capacity and its strategic location could make it a hub for oil processing and trade. But even if Jamaica doesn't find oil reserves of its own, it still has to be mindful of how it engages with the oil sector. Will it use this opportunity to diversify its economy and ensure that the benefits from energy development are felt by the wider population? Or will it be left behind as its neighbours race ahead with their oil booms? The Caribbean's oil future is not just about the resources beneath the ground, it's about the systems built to manage them. Countries like Guyana, Trinidad and Jamaica must build strong frameworks to handle the economic, social and environmental impacts of the